Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. My name is Stephanie Kane. I'm the programming librarian at the Blue Island Public Library. Just to kind of get you guys oriented to the meeting before we get started, if you have any questions, the chat feature is available, so feel free to put any questions in chat and we can handle those as they come or do a Q&A at the end, whichever Greg would prefer. And I will be in the meeting as well, so if you have any like technical questions or anything, feel free to put that in chat. I can try and help you with that during the meeting. But without any further ado, I will turn things over to Greg to talk about his book.
Hi everyone, how are you? Well, my book is called Bad Bandages, Bullets, and Beyond. I know it's kind of an odd title, but I chose that as in the 4 stages of my life. And it's my memoir, and I wrote it specifically to be an inspiration to others, especially considering at the time that we're in right now with this pandemic and all the craziness that's going on throughout the world. I figured folks need a little bit of hope. And so I figured with my life and all the things that I've been through over the years, and as I told Miss McCain earlier that my birthday is actually tomorrow, so I'll officially make 54 years old. And sometimes those 54 years, it seemed like a kind of a hard 54 years, but I have no regrets, and that was the whole point behind the book. Basically, if a guy like me can go through what I've been through throughout my life and come out on top, as I like to say, and have a wonderful wife and wonderful daughters and a pretty good life with no real complaints besides life just being life, then there's no reason why no one else can do the same thing. That's the premise of my book. Currently, the book is being marketed for my first book exhibit in Frankfurt, Germany. It's a 3-day exhibition. The average turnout is between 20 and 30,000 people per book exhibit. My second show is going to be in the United Arab Emirates, and that's in November. And then my third show for the year is going to be in Guadalajara, Mexico. And then I've got, let me think here. I've got 11 more shows lined up for 2021. And so the one show I do want to attend myself personally is in London, England, at the London Book Fair. So I'm pretty busy, with the book and all. And then the book has led to so many other things over the past couple of months. Like I actually have a men's group that I just started as well. I've only got a few participants so far, but as you all know, I'm a local. So I'm trying to get it set up for the Blue Island Rec Center, but because of the pandemic again, hours have been cut and staffing and all those things. So the men's group is currently being held at the Wingate Hotel in Tinley Park until I can find a venue locally, either between here or Robbins. What else have I got going on? I've also have a podcast in relation to the book that I started as well. So I'm going on my 3rd episode, and I've got 9 more episodes planned out for the year, and then 1 for the beginning of the year that I'm doing content on actually right now. That's on top of my full-time job. So I'm pretty busy. So anyway, you have any questions for me?
I have a question, actually. How long
Sure.
did it take you to write your book from like start to finish? You said that you wrapped it up in like a 3-month period, but I mean like...
Yes, ma'am. Total, it took me 2 years. And that's only because the book was very hard to write. Even if it is your own story, you're trying to figure out like, how do I frame it? What do I put in it? What do I want to say? How do I want to say it? So all those things went into it. What story do I want to share? What stories do I not want to share? Do I want to mention names or not mention names. So all that went into it, and but once the book was actually done, then it was a sense of relief because it was my first time ever doing anything like it. I really enjoyed doing it, and I had some help, so it wasn't like I was by myself. I was smart enough to get some help from some professionals, and it all turned out fine. Um, and I'm actually in the process of working on a second book from critiques that I've gotten from friends and people who read the book itself. That I should fill in some more gaps. It should have been longer, but I tried to keep the book very concise and to the point, and not drifting off into a bunch of mini stories that went away from the point of what I was trying to do.
Right, that makes sense. I'm sure it's hard to kind of narrow down what anecdotes are the most important to put in the narrative.
Very much so. Very much so. Cause my wife, she even told me, she says, "Honey, said you could have wrote the book to be 3 times as long as this." I said, "I know, honey, but I had a mission, I had an idea, and so I stuck with that. So I'll figure that out in the next book, how to add some more detail, and we'll just go from there." So, but it was definitely fun to write, um, in a lot of ways. Um, but I just, like I said, just needed more detail in some areas. So,
Yeah.
but everybody loves it. So, but I guess as a fair warning, when it is a tearjerker to a point. So, have a box of Kleenex handy. And I actually went with a local publisher. So they did a really great job for me. Let me see. In order to purchase the book, you can contact me directly. My email is Greg Robinson, or GregRobinson at theunbreakableman.live. And let me spell that out because that's a long one. GHEUNBREAKABLE.live, LIVE. I have a website as well, but it's a work in progress right now. I'm getting rid of my first batch right now. Things are going very well. So, yeah, they're going very well. And so I've been in Blue Island for 20 years now. It's hard to believe, but I have. Both my girls were born here in Blue Island. One was St. Francis and one was Metro South. And then my wife's first job coming back to Chicago was at St. Francis. And we have a couple of friends who retired from St. Francis. And, so it was not my intent to stay here for a very long time, but Blue Island grew on me.
It does that.
Yeah, it does do that. So my wife graduated from high school at Eisenhower. No, our oldest daughter graduated from Eisenhower. Now the baby's going to Eisenhower. So yeah, we're definitely locals.
So, do you have any fun anecdotes from either the book or from the book writing process that you can share? Like any, like especially good stories from the book, or anything that you might share with like another aspiring author about the process of writing your first memoir?
Well, one thing I can say for sure is be consistent. don't give up, because the process is not easy. And I don't want that to deter anyone, but you want people to go into it with their eyes wide open and understanding. I was really fortunate. I knew a few people that I knew of, and I had some guidance, and I found a local publisher who was willing to work with me. And the cost just to get a book written is just, it varies widely, anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000 just to write a book. And that depends upon the length of the pages and what you're doing for the binding and all those things that go into it as well on top of the writing. Now, I was fortunate where I guess that's probably the one best thing I can suggest is I used a ghostwriter for writing my book. So I wrote out all my material and everything on my stories and how I wanted them, and I explained to the ghostwriter how I wanted it presented, how I wanted my story to sound. And we worked together for 2 years in order to get it just the way I wanted it. What I was trying to say, how I was trying to say it, and they did an outstanding job in the process. So, and for those of you who don't know what a ghostwriter is, it's basically someone who takes your material and they write it for you based upon the information that you provide, whether it be written or verbal or audio or however you want to do it. And so that's what I did. We agreed upon a length and a contract, and we went from there. And so like myself personally, I have the copyright to my book. I own all the rights. So I don't have a publisher or a wholesaler dictating to me on what I can say and what I can't say, and taking a percentage. So anything that I do with the book is completely up to me. So, but I went with a small publisher as well. It can be. I just had a question. I'm sorry. I just had a question asked. Is it expensive to hire a ghostwriter? And it can be expensive, but like what I did, and I'm a little bit older, so some of these things are new to me. So I looked through Fiverr. If you all know what Fiverr is, it's like a global marketplace where you can hire freelancers to do work for you. You can go through sites like LinkedIn, social media business sites like LinkedIn, put a request in. But mine just happened to be with my publisher personally. So, and they ghost wrote the book for me. So, but there's all sorts of options out there. And options like Fiverr and LinkedIn will probably save you some money. Fiverr is a global marketplace. It's based out of, actually the home company is based out of Israel, out of Tel Aviv. So you'll have freelancers from Sri Lanka, from Pakistan, from Belgium, from France, from Germany, from the US. You can filter it to fit your budget. You can filter it to fit your language, whether you want someone who's Spanish speaking or English speaking or French speaking. So it's really good in that way. I'm not promoting them per se, but they've been very helpful to me in my journey and some of the things that I want to do. Now, there's other sites too as well that are similar to Fiverr or LinkedIn. But as long as you put in the research and you find out what's comfortable for you, then yeah, it really works. Like I said, I found a small local publisher, and if you want anybody's interested, I can give you their name and their website, and you can look at them. It worked for me. It wasn't a big publishing house. So anyway, so that's pretty much that's it.
I'll just chime back in because I know we had someone new join. If you have any questions for Mr. Robinson about his book or the authorial process or anything like that, feel free to put them in the chat. You can also unmute yourself with the little mic icon if you want to ask him the question directly. But feel free to just chime in if you have any questions. And kind of going off of your answer for the last question, you mentioned all of the different locations where your book's being toured. Are you offering the book in multiple languages? Is that part of it, or just
For
out of my
right
own
now,
curiosity?
right now I'm just offering the book in English. Um, I'm sure that's something that can be worked out at a later date. I just haven't got to that point yet. Um, I'm working on audiobook as well. Right now it's strictly hard copy, so I know I'm limiting myself, but that's okay. That's fine for right now. Because the book process doesn't end after you write it. There's a whole nother slew of things that because I'm learning as I go, and I'm enjoying it in the process. I just got lucky, and I use a company called the Combined Book Exchange, and that's who's marketing my book for me. But it was all via research. I had no one to guide me. It was just, what is this? What is this? Okay, I like what these people do, so let me get with them. And then anyway, so and that's really what I'm doing. I feel like I was very fortunate, and I found somebody that worked for me, so I don't have to be with my book when it's getting marketed. Now, if I wanted to, I could go to all the events myself and, and sign and autograph and make my beautiful face known to the world in a public setting. But no, I don't have to do that. So that saves me a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of travel. And like with the marketing company that I use, there's all sorts of packages. So, but what they do for me is I send them my book. They put up a display copy. They do a little bio, and then they market the book for me to these thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And the people who show up to these particular book exhibitions are fellow authors, there are distributors, there are wholesalers, there are movie producers, there are production companies, just your average everyday citizen. So I don't want to scare anyone when I say this, but like I know a little bit about business. So like for me, I'm guessing just people who want to be authors and sell a book. I'm looking at about 2,000. Well, let me rephrase that. I'm looking at about 6,000 to 7,000 sales by the end of this fiscal year, within a 3-month time frame for 3 shows. So then that goes on the other end when you talk about writing and publishing a book. You need to have an infrastructure set up. It's for whether you use a company like Amazon for your sales, you need to have a distributor to get your books to Amazon, or you need to work on something on the business end, or either you have a large publishing house who does all those things for you, and that's the whole point of them having a percentage of your business. Like I said, I'm learning all this. I've learned all this, so so it's all about how you want to approach it. Yeah. Otherwise, you'll end up allowing yourself to be overwhelmed because you can't meet the volume. So writing a book is not just being an author, it's also being a business person as well. For those who are aspiring to be an author, you need to look at all the angles. And like I said, I know from personal experience that I'm learning it as I go along. But that's what I'm in the process of doing now. Hopefully I help someone with that.
I did ask that question right as someone else put in the chat. They were asking, what age were you in the book when the story begins?
Roughly roughly 5 or 6. Yeah, roughly 5 or 6. Yep.
And does the book, since it starts when you're so young, does it follow you pretty much for your entire life, or do you hit like upon certain milestones? How, like, what's the structure like?
Well, the structure pretty much it follows me throughout my life. It goes from basically from being a toddler to 16, and then from 16 to about 18, which was a lot happened within that, or I should say 16 to about 19, because a lot happened within that 3-year time frame. Then it goes from about 20 to about 35 and 30, about 35, and then on with the rest. So there was like 4 distinct stages, and that's where the name comes from: bad, bandages, bullets, and beyond. So it talks about the childhood, growing up, and then it talks about my life as a teen. I was a homeless teen, and there's no shame in that. It is what it is. For quite a few years, and I went from and then from being a homeless teen to being a military man, and then from a military man on to at the point of where I'm at in my life currently. One of the main, I guess, someone asked a question about what are the main lessons, I believe, that you learned from the book. Was that right?
Yep. What are the main lessons you've learned in the process of writing and then publishing your book? And looking back, what would you have done differently in the process? What are you glad that you did do in the process?
Well, I'm very glad I wrote the book. The book for me personally served as therapy. We all go through things in life. Life can be tough sometimes more so than other times. But it really helped me as a person to get past some of my own things that I carried around in my life, and for lack of better words, baggage. It helped me to really grow as a man because I was able to get some things off my chest that most men don't talk about. I think it helped me in a little bit. My wife might say differently, but be a better husband. I like to think I grew some more too as well as a dad, as a father. And I can most definitely say that me personally, I definitely grew as a man, which led me into doing other things outside of my book. But the biggest lessons I learned, or that anyone can learn from my book, is to persevere despite of what may be going on in your life. There's always a rainbow at the end. And there were times where things are very, very tough, but it's, I don't want to be too crass when I say this, but it's either you live or you die. It's either you persevere or you stop and you don't move forward. And that's really what I tried to show in my book. It's perseverance. Just go through. Sometimes you just got to go through. It looks like there's no hope and you don't see any way out. And then an opportunity will come up. Like I'll give you one of my favorite stories that I talk about in my life is I was a homeless teen. I was about 17. I was 17 years old. And I had, I got arrested in a store for shoplifting. Well, most of you won't know this, but there was a store called Zayre's. It was much like Walmart, and they've been out of business for at least 20 years, I'm guessing. And I had shoplifted and I had stolen a T-shirt that I needed. It wasn't stealing because I was just a thief, but it was the stealing out of necessity. And so the store detective arrested me and they handcuffed me. And I'm a 17-year-old kid, I'm homeless, got no place to go, basically. And so he asked me for identification, and in those days, it was very loose. There was no digital, ID. So I gave him a social security card that I had found on the street that I kept in this makeshift wallet. And he ran the social security number. Well, the person whose social security card it was probably had a criminal record as long as both of my arms put together. So, uh, so I said, no, that's not me. So it's beginning who I was, and I gave a fictitious name, and I got locked up in juvenile detention for about 2.5 months. Well, when you're homeless and you're out there on the streets and you're by yourself, in my mind, the way I thought at the time, that was 3 square meals a day. I was warm. I had clothes. I didn't have to worry about anyone trying to do me harm. I got sent back to school for free, which I was still a kid. All I wanted to do was have a life like everybody else. But unfortunately, my life wasn't that way at the time. So I gave them a run around, and they finally figured out who I was. But in the process of while I was in juvenile detention, I'd heard about Job Corps on the radio. For those of you who don't know what Job Corps is, it's a national training program for troubled youth, run by the Department of Labor. So when I was released from juvenile detention back to my mother, who they found and contacted, I took this bicycle that I had acquired, and I rode it down to the local Job Corps office. I found it, and I heard about it on the radio, a local radio station. And when I got to the office, I got an application. I filled the application out, and I took the application back home to my mother, and I gave it to her to sign, but she refused to sign my application for Job Corps. So you need to understand that here I am, 17, going on 18 years old. I knew that my future is very, very, very bleak, and I probably won't make it on the streets for another 2 years. If I do, then I'm going to conform and be like everybody else, because that's something that a lot of people don't understand, is that when you're in a situation, it's easy for you to watch the news and the media and then portray people on the street and things like that and say, well, this or that. But if you're not in that situation, you can't really understand. Because these are people who have a base need, and their need is food, shelter, those things first before anything else. So we can all sit and pontificate and talk about, oh, how unfortunate, or why don't they get a job, or why don't they do this? Well, it's not that simple always. But anyway, back on point. So my mother didn't sign the application, so I forged my mother's signature. I sent my application off to Job Corps. Within about 3 weeks, I got a reply back from Job Corps. They accepted my application. They sent me a one-way ticket on Trailways bus line, which doesn't exist anymore either. They were the counterpart to Greyhound. And the tell all my stuff. And the day before I went to take the Trailways down to Knoxville, Tennessee, which where the Job Corps Center was, I hustled about $150 on a pool table, and that was my money that gave me food and drink until I got the Job Corps and carried me over until my first paycheck, so to speak, from Job Corps. So that's one of my favorite stories. It might be kind of long-winded, but that's just how things work. And from Job Corps, I got my GED, and that catapulted me into looking at the military, and got into some other programs and such. And then I ended up making the military a career. So yeah. Hopefully I made sense there in my rambling story.
It definitely did. So how long were you in the military, and which area did you serve in?
Well, I was in the Navy and the Army. So I spent 9 years in the Navy, and then I spent 9 years in the Army. So during my Army time, I was a hospital corpsman, which is like an LPN. So I was an LPN / paramedic. So my first duty station was actually the Naval Hospital, San Diego, California, where I spent 3 years. My first year was outside of school was in pediatrics, and my last year and a half was male orthopedic trauma. So I worked mostly motor vehicle accidents, um, motorcycle accidents, amputees, and on and on and on and on. Then I spent a year on the USS Comfort, a hospital ship. And then from there, I volunteered to go with the United States Marine Corps, where I was attached to the infantry for 3 years. And where I did 3 tours overseas. And my first tour was in Monrovia, Liberia, small country on the west coast of Africa, at the American Embassy. And then my second tour was on the Turkey-Iraqi border during the first Gulf War, what we called Desert Shield, Desert Storm. And then my third tour was in Kuwait, helping out the Kurdish refugees. So, and then I spent 3 years attached to a Naval Aerospace Medical Research Laboratory in Pensacola, Florida. And then after I was discharged from there, then I spent time in the U.S. Army. So that was pretty much my military career.
Was there any particular area you especially enjoyed being stationed in? It sounds like you went all over the place.
I did. I spent a lot of time in Europe and the Middle East and Africa. Particular place that I enjoyed the most, I'd probably say Italy. We were the first, when I went to Italy to my first tour, we were the first American ship in Sicily in 45 years at that time. So we spent 2 weeks in Sicily, had a great time. It was just a lot of fun. You know, you're a young man. They gave us keys to the city. You didn't speak the language, but you learned very quickly. I was fortunate that I spoke some Spanish from my growing up. So with Spanish being a Romance language, along with Portuguese and Italian and Latin and French, you can kind of cobble things together and figure things out when people are speaking to you, if you get a fairly good understanding anyway. And so that's what I did. I was able to cobble a few phrases together, and I listened very closely, and I could understand a percentage of what was being said to me. And then that was always an icebreaker. France was also pretty enjoyable. We did a lot of training there, especially in the southern parts of France, Marseille, Deaconjures. We spent a little time in Paris. Yeah, we were all over the place. I spent some time in Spain as well, which was a great time. We spent time in Rota, which is primarily a port city. And then I spent some time in Madrid as well. Palma Mallorca, which is a resort area for the Europeans. So spent about 2 weeks there as well. Anyway, we're all over the place. Spent time in Israel and Haifa and Tel Aviv. Spent some time in Turkey and Izmir, a coastal city. Spent some time in Crete as well. And that's just on the European side, not including Kuwait and Iraq. Spent some time in Africa as well, obviously, like I said before, in Monrovia, in the capital city. Spent some time as well on the Canaries, and a little bit of time in Senegal and Sierra Leone as well. So, a lot of travel. A lot of travel. And that doesn't even include our neighbor, Canada. We spent a lot of time in Canada, quite a bit of time in Canada too. I had to think about it for a second. Because as a matter of fact, I went to Halifax, Nova Scotia, and where we trained with, what was it, the Halifax? Yeah, it was in Halifax. Well, I can't think of the ship, right? It doesn't really matter, but we spent time in Halifax and in Dartmouth, up on the northern border between Wisconsin and Minnesota, and Canada, up through the Great Lakes, all up through Poughkeepsie and Buffalo, and some time in Montreal as well. Oh yes, somebody wanted some information on the mentoring program. Well, it's really not a mentoring program as of yet. It's just, at least that's not what I'm calling it as of yet. That's my men's group that I spoke about earlier. I mean, right now we're holding meetings like the second and the fourth Saturday of each month, and it's from 6 to 7 p.m. at the Wingate Hotel in Tinley Park until I can find another venue. So if you want any information on it, I listed my email earlier. It's Greg Robinson at theunbreakableman.live. My business telephone number is 708-248-4847. Pretty much it is catered to young men and men from 15 to 40, which is really my target group. Anyone can come out, but I'm limiting it right now to 10 people per session, just because of what's going on with the pandemic. Not to mention, I just want to keep the group small so as we get into the content and I start speaking and facilitating the group, then we keep everybody together at one time. But yeah, I guess I'll talk a little bit about that too, since I was asked a question. It's based upon 12 principles that I learned. And the first principle is, well, actually it's based on an acronym as well. So let me go into the acronym. The acronym is FATHER. And F stands for flawed and faithful. A stands for accountable and authoritative. T stands for tenacity or being tenacious and trustworthy. H stands for honesty and humility. E stands for being earnest or passionate and an executor. And R stands for being respectful and a rewarder. And so those are the 12 principles that I talk about with other men. It's a very open and frank discussion, which is mostly narrated by me, since I'm the facilitator. But it is to give men some tools that a lot of us haven't been given in our lifetime. We've been given bits and pieces. We have cobbled together on how to be men according to what we've seen or what we've heard. And just being frank, most men today don't have their fathers at home like I was. And so I feel like this is something very important that I do, and it's all based around the book. When I started looking at my life in hindsight and all the things that I had been through, and now what I had done with the book by being an inspiration to others, I said, I've got a lot. I feel like I have a lot to offer being so young. Well, then I was taught these things. And so now I'm taking these same things that I was taught now and passing it on to other men as a gift. Because it's free and it's my time. And so, like I said, it's a gift. So anyone's welcome to come out. Like I said, this is primarily for men. No offense against the ladies, but this is strictly for them, for something that they need to learn as well. So I can pass it on, and I'm happy to do so. hopefully that answered the question. I'm going to be in the dark, so I got to turn this one. All right. No, that's not going to work. All right. So any other questions? And for those of you who didn't hear, I also have a podcast as well. It's very new. So, and it's also called The Unbreakable Man. And you can find it on Spotify. You can find it on Google Podcasts. You can find it on Apple Podcasts. You can find it on Cashbox. So all the majors.
And what do you talk about on your podcast?
Basically, the principles that I mentioned earlier about being a father and about the principles of being a man. So the podcast and the men's group all tie in together. So yeah, so it's not very long. It's pretty much a narrated podcast, which is me. So there's no guest at the moment. And I'm not sure if that's going to happen, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But currently it's just me, and I'm the narrator, and I'm speaking about those same principles, and hopefully to reach as many young men as possible. That's really the goal, just to help men. So, and it's, like I said, it's called The Unbreakable Man. And that's my long story short, talking about the book again. And so I ended up, I started a company last year, and I ended up rebranding the company to doing business as The Unbreakable Man. So I named the podcast the same as my company name, along with the men's group. So they all tie in together. So if you see The Unbreakable Man signed on your copy of the book, then you'll know who it is.
And just to reiterate for people who came in after the fact, how can people purchase your book?
You can contact me directly through Greg Robinson at theunbreakableman.live. And then I'll respond to you and I'll send you a copy, and then you can I'll send you a signed copy, actually, and we can go from there. Oh, thank you very much for the congratulations. It was a long process, but well worth it. And I'm so happy I did it. And so much has happened because of me writing this book. It's just, sometimes it seems surreal. So that's where like I said, the men's group came from. That's where the podcast came from, among other things that I'm working on. It all came from just writing the book. So now my company is fortunate they have a local author in-house.
And you mentioned earlier that you're working on a second book now also?
Yes, ma'am. I'm working on the second book too, as well, which I had no intention of doing. It was just the intent just to write the one book and be done, and none of these other things were expected. But yes, I'm writing a second book as well, and it'll go into more detail about my life, more of the enjoyable things. And I'm not sure what the rest of the content is going to be yet, but it's definitely going to be a second book. I've had a lot of great feedback from family and friends and from others who've purchased a copy of the book. So it's definitely a must. So like I said, I'm already working on content for that as well. Not sure of a name yet. That'll come over the next year or so. But that is my goal, to probably have another book out within a year or two. I don't know if I want to set it at a year yet. Let me see how everything else goes first. But you never know. So, but I'll keep everybody abreast. So, like I said, feel free to reach out to me. You have my email address. The website is still a work in progress. So, and if you haven't figured out from the email address, that the website is theunbreakableman.live.
Okay, so barring any final questions, Greg, is there anything you wanted to wrap up with this evening?
No, I'm not really. I think I covered everything. But I'm really thankful that everybody showed up.
Yeah, we had a
To my
wonderful
author
turnout.
event. Yes, very much so. And I really appreciate the support. So I'm trying to do Blue Island good.
Well, we're happy to have you in town. We can always use more local authors. And I didn't mention at the beginning, but just so everybody knows, we are recording the session and I'll be posting it to the library's YouTube and Facebook channels after the event. So if you wanted to watch this again or get any of Mr. Robinson's information from video after the fact, or if you know anyone who wanted to attend but couldn't make it tonight, we'll have that up online so you can watch it afterwards. But otherwise, I think we're about finished. So I will close out the meeting. And thank you all again for attending. Thank you, Mr. Robinson, for coming out with us tonight. Out in
Thank
quotation
you.
marks. We were happy to have you. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful evening.